The rope chafed against Olivia Bennett's wrists as the angry crowd surged forward, their faces twisted with hatred beneath the merciless New Mexico sun. She stood on the wooden platform in the center of Silver City's dusty main street, accused of treason against the Union, and nobody seemed willing to listen to the truth that burned in her throat like desert sand. "Hang the Confederate witch!" someone shouted from the mob, and Olivia felt her knees threaten to buckle. The war had been over for 3 years now, since 1865, but the wounds still festered in this corner of the territory, like infection in an untended injury. She had known that helping wounded soldiers would bring trouble eventually, but she had never imagined it would lead to this moment, with a noose being prepared and the marshal looking at her with cold, unforgiving eyes. "Miss Bennett," Marshal Crawford said, his voice carrying over the crowd's roar, "you have been accused by multiple witnesses of providing aid and comfort to Confederate raiders who attacked the Union supply convoy last month. 3 good men died in that attack. Do you have anything to say before we carry out justice?" Olivia lifted her chin, her dark hair falling loose from its pins in the dry wind. "I am a healer," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "I took an oath to help the suffering, regardless of which uniform they wore. That is not treason. That is mercy." "Mercy for murderers!" a woman shrieked from the crowd. Olivia recognized her as Martha Hendricks, whose son had died in the war. The pain in the woman's eyes cut deeper than any accusation. The marshal raised his hand for silence. "The witnesses say you sheltered Confederate soldiers in your home, treated their wounds, and sent them on their way with food and supplies. That makes you an accomplice to their crimes." "I treated wounded men," Olivia insisted. "I did not ask their allegiance before I stopped their bleeding. Would you have me turn away a dying man because of the color of his coat?" "When that coat is gray, yes," someone shouted. Olivia closed her eyes, feeling the hopelessness of her situation settle over her like a shroud. Her small cabin on the edge of town had become a sanctuary for the wounded over the past years, both during the war and after. She had learned healing from her mother, who had learned it from her grandmother, and the knowledge ran in her blood like a calling she could not ignore. But mercy, she was learning, was a dangerous virtue in a world still drunk on vengeance. The sound of hoofbeats cut through the noise of the crowd, and Olivia opened her eyes to see a rider approaching fast from the eastern road. The horse was a magnificent palomino, its coat gleaming gold in the afternoon sun, and the man in the saddle sat with the easy confidence of someone born to the frontier. He wore a dusty brown hat pulled low over his eyes, and a trail-worn duster that had seen better days. As he drew closer, Olivia could make out the strong line of his jaw and the determined set of his mouth. The rider pulled his horse to a stop at the edge of the crowd, dismounting in one smooth motion. He was tall, she noticed, with broad shoulders and the lean build of a man who spent his life in the saddle. When he pushed his hat back, she saw eyes the color of storm clouds, sharp and assessing as they took in the scene before him. "What is happening here?" the stranger demanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Marshal Crawford turned to face him, his hand moving instinctively toward his gun. "This is official business, stranger. Move along." The man didn't move. Instead, he stepped forward, pushing through the crowd with a presence that made people instinctively step aside. "My name is Harrison Ellis," he said, "and I am a witness to this woman's character. Whatever she is accused of, I can testify to the truth." Olivia stared at the man, this Harrison Ellis, and felt something shift in her chest. She had never seen him before in her life, yet he stood before the hostile crowd as if he had every right to intervene in her fate. There was something in his eyes when he glanced at her, a flicker of recognition that made no sense, and she found herself unable to look away. "You know this woman?" the marshal asked skeptically. "I know of her," Harrison replied. "I was a scout for the Union Army during the war, rode dispatch between the forts and the field hospitals. I heard stories about a woman healer in Silver City who treated wounded from both sides. The soldiers called her an angel of mercy. Union soldiers, Marshal, men who wore the blue and bled for it." A murmur ran through the crowd, and Olivia saw doubt flicker across some of the faces. Harrison continued, his voice growing stronger. "I came to Silver City specifically to find this woman, to thank her for what she did. My brother was wounded at the Battle of Glorieta Pass in '62. He was left behind when our forces retreated, bleeding out from a bullet in his leg. A woman found him on the battlefield, brought him to safety, and treated his wounds. She saved his life, and he was wearing Union blue. That does not excuse helping the enemy, Marshal Crawford said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. She helped everyone, Harrison said. That is not treason, that is humanity. If we punish people for showing mercy, what does that make us? Olivia felt tears sting her eyes, not from fear, but from the unexpected defense from this stranger. She watched Harrison turn to look at her fully for the first time, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. There was something raw in his expression, a mixture of determination and something else she could not quite name. I rode 300 miles to find the woman who saved my brother's life, Harrison said quietly. I will not stand by and watch her hang for an act of compassion. The marshal looked between Harrison and Olivia, clearly struggling with the situation. You say your brother was saved by her. Can he testify to this? Harrison's jaw tightened. My brother died 6 months ago. Fever took him, but before he passed, he made me promise to find the woman who gave him those extra years with his family. He described her, this place, everything. It is her. How can you be certain? Someone in the crowd called out. Harrison reached into his duster and pulled out a small piece of cloth, faded and worn. My brother said the woman who saved him tore a piece from her petticoat to use as a bandage when she ran out of proper dressing. He kept it all these years, said it reminded him that there was still good in the world, even in the midst of hell. He held up the cloth, and Olivia gasped. She recognized the pattern, a small floral print that her mother had loved. She had indeed torn pieces from that petticoat during the worst days of the war, when supplies ran desperately short and wounded men kept arriving at her door. I remember, she whispered. There was a young soldier, could not have been more than 19. He had lost so much blood. I found him in the arroyo east of town, half dead from thirst and blood loss. I did what I could. His name was Henry, Harrison said softly. Henry Ellis. And because of you, he got to meet his daughter before he died. She was born a year after the war ended. He got to hold her, teach her to walk, tell her stories. Those years were a gift from you. The crowd had grown quiet now, the bloodlust fading into uncertainty. Olivia saw the marshal remove his hat and run a hand through his graying hair. This does not address the accusations about the Confederate raiders, he said, but his tone had shifted. Then let me address it, Harrison said. I have been tracking those raiders for the past 2 months. They hit 3 supply convoys and a stagecoach between here and Fort Sumner. I know who they are, and I know where they are hiding. But first, I need to clear this woman's name, because I have proof that she is innocent of helping them. What proof? The marshal demanded. Harrison gestured toward his saddlebags. I have sworn statements from 2 of the wounded men from that convoy attack. I tracked them down while they were recovering in Mesilla. Both of them stated that they were treated by Miss Bennett after the attack, and that she turned away the Confederate raiders when they came to her door demanding food and shelter. She refused them, even when they threatened her. The only men she treated from that attack were Union soldiers. Marshal Crawford's expression shifted to one of careful consideration. Why would the witnesses lie about seeing her help Confederates? Because people see what they expect to see, Harrison replied. Miss Bennett has treated Confederate wounded in the past, during the war. Some folks cannot let go of that anger. They want someone to blame for losses that still hurt. But helping a wounded man during wartime is different from aiding active criminals after the war has ended. She did one, not the other. Olivia felt hope kindle in her chest for the first time since the accusations had begun. She watched Harrison turn back to face her, and their eyes met across the dusty space. There was something in that moment, a connection that defied explanation, as if they had known each other far longer than these few desperate minutes. The marshal walked over to Harrison's horse and retrieved the saddlebags. He spent several long minutes reading through the documents Harrison had brought, his expression growing increasingly troubled. Finally, he looked up at the crowd. These statements are signed and witnessed, he said. They contradict the accusations against Miss Bennett. There is reasonable doubt here. What about justice for the men who died? Someone shouted. Justice requires truth, the marshal replied. And the truth is not as clear as we thought. I am releasing Miss Bennett pending further investigation. If anyone has actual evidence of her helping those raiders, bring it forward. Otherwise, this matter is closed. The crowd erupted in protest, but the marshal's deputies moved forward to restore order. Harrison strode up onto the platform and pulled a knife from his belt, cutting through the ropes that bound Olivia's wrists with quick, efficient movements. His hands were warm and calloused when they steadied her as she stumbled, her legs weak from standing so long in fear. "Can you walk?" he asked quietly, his storm gray eyes searching her face with concern. "I think so," Olivia managed, though in truth her whole body was trembling. The reality of how close she had come to death was crashing over her in waves. Harrison kept one hand on her elbow as he guided her down from the platform, using his body to shield her from the still hostile members of the crowd. His horse stood waiting, calm despite the chaos, and he lifted her into the saddle before mounting behind her. The warmth of his body against her back felt solid and real, an anchor in a world that had nearly ended. "Where are you taking her?" the marshal called out. "To her home," Harrison replied, "unless you plan to provide protection from anyone who decides the law is not moving fast enough." The marshal had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I will send a deputy to keep watch on her place tonight." Harrison did not bother to reply. He simply turned his horse and urged it into a steady trot, carrying Olivia away from the hateful stares and the platform that had nearly been her gallows. She found herself leaning back against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. Her mind was still reeling, trying to process everything that had happened. They rode in silence through the dusty streets of Silver City, past the false-fronted buildings and the curious onlookers who watched them pass. Olivia's cabin sat on the eastern edge of town, a small adobe structure with a covered porch and a well out front. It had been her sanctuary for 5 years now, since she had come to New Mexico territory to escape the devastation of the war back east. Now it felt vulnerable, exposed to the judgment of people who had once been her neighbors. Harrison dismounted first, then reached up to help her down. His hands spanned her waist, strong and sure, and for a moment they stood close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. He smelled of horse and leather and the open trail, a scent that was somehow comforting in its earthiness. "Thank you," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You saved my life." "You saved my brother's life," Harrison replied. "I owed you a debt." "You did not owe me anything," she protested. "I only did what was right." "Exactly," he said, "and so did I." He released her and stepped back, creating a respectful distance between them. Olivia felt the loss of his warmth like a physical thing. She turned toward her cabin, suddenly aware of how empty it would feel, how afraid she would be when darkness fell, and she was alone with her thoughts. "Will you stay?" The words left her mouth before she could stop them, and she felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I mean, I have a spare room, and you said you rode 300 miles. You must be exhausted. And I owe you a meal at least, after what you did." Harrison studied her for a long moment, and she could not quite read the expression on his face. Finally, he nodded. "I would appreciate that, madam. It has been a long road." Relief flooded through her, along with something else, something that felt dangerously like excitement. She led him into the cabin, which was simple but clean. The main room served as both living space and her healing work area, with shelves lined with bottles of herbs and tinctures, clean bandages stacked in neat piles, and her mother's medical books arranged on a small table. A doorway led to her bedroom, and a ladder ascended to a small loft where she sometimes housed patients who needed extended care. "You can put your things in the loft," Olivia said, moving to light the oil lamps as the sun began to set outside. "There is a bed up there, simple but comfortable. I will make us some supper." Harrison carried his saddlebags up the ladder, while Olivia busied herself at the stove, grateful for the familiar routine of preparing a meal. Her hands were still shaking slightly, and she had to pause several times to steady herself. The reality of what had nearly happened kept crashing over her in waves. She could have died today. Would have died, if not for a stranger who had ridden into town at exactly the right moment. When Harrison came back down the ladder, he had removed his duster and rolled up his sleeves. In the warm light of the oil lamps, Olivia could see him more clearly. He looked to be in his late 20s, with sun-bronzed skin and the lean, hard look of a man who lived rough. There was a scar along his jawline, white against his tan skin, and his hands bore the calluses of someone who worked with rope and leather and weapons. But his eyes, when they looked at her, were kind. "Can I help?" he asked. "You could fetch some water from the well," Olivia suggested. "The bucket is by the door." He nodded and went outside, returning a few minutes later with the bucket full. Olivia used some of it for cooking and set the rest aside. She had beans that had been soaking since morning, along with some salt pork and cornbread she had made the day before. It was simple fare, but it was what she had. They worked in companionable silence for a while, Harrison taking a seat at her small wooden table while she cooked. She was acutely aware of his presence, of the way he watched her move around the cabin with quiet attention. It should have made her nervous, but instead she found it oddly comforting. "Tell me about your brother," Olivia said as she stirred the beans. "What was he like?" Harrison's expression softened. "Henry was the best of us. Younger than me by 4 years. Always had a smile on his face, no matter how bad things got. He enlisted because he believed in preserving the Union, believed it was the right thing to do. I tried to talk him out of it, told him he was too young, but he would not listen." "You enlisted too," Olivia observed. "Someone had to look after him," Harrison said, with a slight smile. "I became a scout because it meant I could move between units, check on him when possible. But I was not there when he got wounded at Glorietta Pass. I was 200 miles away, carrying dispatches. By the time I found out what had happened, he was already back with our unit, leg bandaged and healing. He told me about the woman who had saved him, said she was the bravest person he had ever met." Olivia felt her throat tighten. "I was terrified the whole time. I had never treated a gunshot wound before. I kept thinking I was going to make a mistake, do something wrong. But you did not," Harrison said. "You kept your head and you saved him. He used to say that you gave him a second chance at life. He made the most of it too, married a good woman, started a farm in Kansas. He was happy." "I am sorry you lost him," Olivia said softly. "So am I, but I'm grateful for the years we had because of you." Harrison paused, then added, "He made me promise something before he died. Made me swear I would find you and make sure you were all right. He worried that your kindness might have brought you trouble. He was right to worry," Olivia said with a bitter laugh, "though I doubt he imagined quite this much trouble." "Tell me what happened," Harrison said. "Why did people turn on you?" Olivia brought 2 plates to the table and sat down across from him. The beans were hot and filling, the cornbread still fresh enough to be good. She picked at her food while she gathered her thoughts. "During the war, wounded soldiers started showing up at my door," she began. "At first it was just Union men from the nearby forts. Then one day, a Confederate soldier stumbled into my yard, half dead from infection. He was delirious, calling out for his mother. I could not turn him away." "That took courage," Harrison said. "Or foolishness," Olivia replied. "Word got around that I would treat anyone who needed help. Some people understood. Others said I was betraying the Union. After the war ended, I thought it would get better. But then those raiders attacked the convoy last month, and someone saw me treating wounded men afterward. They assumed the worst." "The statements I brought say you refused to help the raiders," Harrison reminded her. "I did refuse them," Olivia confirmed. "They came to my door that night, demanded food and medical supplies. I told them I had nothing for murderers. They threatened me, said they would burn my cabin down. But then they heard the marshal's posse coming, and they ran. The next day someone started spreading rumors that I had sheltered them, and people believed it because they wanted to believe it." Harrison reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The gesture was simple, but the warmth of his touch sent a shiver through her. "You are safe now," he said. "I will make sure of it." "You cannot stay here forever," Olivia pointed out, though part of her wished he could. "You have your own life to get back to." "Actually, I do not," Harrison said. "After Henry died, I sold the ranch we had been running together. I have been drifting since then, taking odd jobs as a scout and guide. I have no ties, no place I need to be." "That sounds lonely," Olivia said softly. "It is," Harrison admitted. "But it is also free. No responsibilities, no one depending on me. I can go where I want, do what I want." "Is that what you want?" Olivia asked, studying his face in the lamplight. "To be alone?" Harrison was quiet for a long moment. "I thought it was," he finally said. "But lately I have been wondering if maybe I was just running from something." "What were you running from?" "Grief, loss, the fear of caring about someone again and losing them too." He met her eyes. "What about you? Why did you come to Silver City? You are educated, clearly from a good family, based on your manners and the way you speak. You could have had an easier life elsewhere." Olivia withdrew her hand from under his and wrapped her arms around herself. "I came here to escape my own ghosts. My parents died of cholera when I was 18. My brother died at Antietam. I was engaged to a man who died at Gettysburg. By the time the war ended, everyone I loved was gone. I could not stay in Virginia anymore. Everything there reminded me of what I had lost. So you came west to start over, Harrison said with understanding. I came west to be useful, Olivia corrected. I needed to do something that mattered, something that would honor the people I had lost. Healing felt like the right choice. My mother taught me everything she knew before she died, and I learned the rest from the army surgeons during the war. You worked in a field hospital? Harrison asked, surprised. For 2 years. I saw things that still give me nightmares. Olivia shuddered at the memories. But I also learned how to save lives. When I came out here, I thought I could leave the war behind, but it followed me anyway. They finished their meal in thoughtful silence. Olivia cleared the plates and washed them in the bucket of water Harrison had brought in. She was intensely aware of him watching her, of the way the small cabin seemed even smaller with his presence filling it. He was a large man, not just in height, but in the space he commanded, and she found herself stealing glances at him when she thought he was not looking. I should probably check on the horse, Harrison said, standing up. Make sure he is settled for the night. There is a small shed out back, Olivia told him. It is not much, but it will keep him dry if it rains. Harrison nodded and headed outside. Olivia took the opportunity to tidy up the cabin, her mind racing with thoughts she could not quite organize. This man, this stranger, had appeared at the worst moment of her life and saved her. More than that, he had defended her character, stood up to a mob on her behalf. And now he was here, in her home, and she found herself noticing things about him that had nothing to do with gratitude. The way his hands moved with confident precision, the warmth in his eyes when he smiled, the strength in his shoulders and the gentle tone of his voice. She was attracted to him, she realized with a start, and the recognition sent heat flooding through her. It had been years since she had felt anything like this. Since her fiancé had died, she had locked that part of herself away, convinced that love was not meant for her. But Harrison Ellis had walked into her life and awakened something she thought was dead. When he returned from tending to his horse, Olivia had composed herself. She showed him where he could wash up, provided him with a clean towel, and then retreated to her bedroom to give him privacy. But sleep did not come easily. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of Harrison moving around in the loft above her. She thought about the way he had looked at her on the platform, the determination in his eyes, the way his hands had felt when he had cut through her bonds, the warmth of his body behind her on the horse. She had nearly died today, and somehow that brush with death had made her feel more alive than she had in years. Morning came with the harsh light of the desert sun streaming through her window. Olivia rose and dressed, braiding her hair and pinning it up neatly. When she emerged from her bedroom, she found Harrison already awake, sitting at her table with a cup of coffee. He must have made it himself, she realized, and the domestic intimacy of that gesture made her heart skip. "Good morning," he said, standing when she entered. "I hope you do not mind. I made coffee." "Not at all," Olivia replied. "Thank you." She poured herself a cup and joined him at the table. In the morning light, she could see the exhaustion on his face. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his jaw was tight with tension. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "Not much," Harrison admitted. "I was keeping watch, making sure nobody decided to take matters into their own hands." Guilt stabbed through her. "You should have woken me. I could have helped keep watch." "You needed rest more than I did," Harrison said. "Besides, this is what I do. Spent years sleeping light on the trail, staying alert for trouble." A knock at the door interrupted them. Harrison was on his feet instantly, his hand moving to the gun at his hip. Olivia felt her heart rate spike, memories of yesterday's mob flooding back. "Miss Bennett," called a voice from outside. "It is Deputy Martins. The marshal sent me to check on you." Harrison relaxed slightly but kept his hand near his weapon as Olivia opened the door. Deputy Martins was a young man, barely 20, with a nervous expression and sweat already beading on his forehead, despite the morning cool. "Miss Bennett," he said, glancing past her to where Harrison stood. "Marshal Crawford wanted me to inform you that he has been investigating your case further. He has concluded that the accusations against you were false. You are cleared of all charges." Relief flooded through Olivia so strongly her knees nearly buckled. "Truly?" "Yes, madam. The marshal spoke to several witnesses last night who confirmed that you refused to help the raiders. The people who accused you have admitted they did not actually see you give aid to the Confederates. They just assume based on your history." The deputy looked uncomfortable. "The marshal wants to formally apologize for what happened yesterday." "An apology does not undo a near hanging," Harrison said coldly from behind her. The deputy flinched. "No, sir, it does not. But it is what the marshal can offer. That and his assurance that Miss Bennett will not face any further trouble from the law." "What about from the townspeople?" Harrison pressed. "Can he guarantee her safety?" "He is making it known that anyone who threatens Miss Bennett will face arrest," the deputy said. "And he is asking the Reverend to preach about mercy and forgiveness this Sunday. It is the best he can do." Olivia touched Harrison's arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. "Thank you, deputy. Please tell the marshal I accept his apology." The deputy nodded and hurried away, clearly relieved to be dismissed. Olivia closed the door and leaned against it, feeling the weight of the past day settle over her. "You are too forgiving," Harrison said, but there was no judgment in his tone, only concern. "What good would anger do me?" Olivia asked. "I am alive. I am cleared of the charges. That is more than I dared hope for yesterday." Harrison crossed the room to her, and she found herself looking up into his storm-gray eyes. He raised one hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently touched her cheek. The gesture was tender, almost reverent, and it made something inside her chest crack open. "You could have died," he said roughly, "because you showed mercy to suffering people. That is not right." "Many things in this world are not right," Olivia replied, "but I cannot change that. I can only do what I believe is moral and hope it makes some small difference." "It makes a difference," Harrison assured her. "You made a difference to Henry. You made a difference to all the men you helped. And you make a difference to me." The air between them felt charged, electric. Olivia's breath caught as Harrison's thumb traced along her cheekbone. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the way he was holding himself back. "Harrison," she whispered, not even sure what she was asking for. He dropped his hand and stepped back, breaking the spell. "I should go into town," he said, his voice rough. "Make sure the marshal is actually taking steps to protect you, and I need to send some telegrams. Let a few people know I found you." Olivia nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "Of course." But Harrison hesitated at the door. "When I get back, maybe you could show me around your property. I noticed your shed needs some repairs, and the well cover looks loose. If you're going to stay here, we should make sure everything is secure." The implication that he intended to stick around made Olivia's heart lift. "I would like that." After Harrison left, Olivia threw herself into work. She checked her supplies of herbs and medicines, noting what needed to be replenished. She swept the cabin floor and changed the linens on her bed. She tried not to think about the way Harrison had looked at her, the way his touch had made her skin tingle, but her mind kept returning to him, to the story of his brother, the promise he had made, the 300 miles he had ridden to keep that promise, to the way he had stood before a hostile mob without hesitation, risking his own safety to defend hers, to the loneliness she had heard in his voice when he spoke of drifting without purpose. She recognized that loneliness. She had been living with it herself for years, trying to convince herself that her work was enough, that she did not need companionship or love. But Harrison's presence had shattered that illusion. She was lonely. She had been lonely for a very long time. Harrison returned late in the afternoon, his saddlebags laden with supplies. "The general store owner sends his apologies," he said as he unpacked food onto her table. "Said he should have spoken up for you yesterday. This is his way of making amends." Olivia stared at the bounty. Fresh bread, butter, eggs, coffee, sugar, flour, beans, and even a small piece of bacon. It was more than she usually bought in a month. "This is too much." "It is what you deserve," Harrison said firmly. "Let them give it. They feel guilty, and they should." Over the next few days, Harrison made himself useful around Olivia's property. He repaired the shed, fixed the well cover, and reinforced the cabin door. He chopped enough firewood to last through the coming winter. Olivia watched him work, admiring the easy competence with which he handled every task. He moved like a man who had spent his life solving problems with his hands, and there was something deeply attractive about that. They fell into a comfortable routine. Olivia would make breakfast while Harrison tended to his horse. They would work on various projects during the day, him on repairs and her on preparing medicines. In the evenings, they would sit together and talk, sharing stories of their pasts and their hopes for the future. Olivia learned that Harrison had grown up on a ranch in Kansas, that he had learned to ride before he could walk, that he loved the open spaces of the frontier, the way the land stretched endlessly under a wide sky, that he had a dry sense of humor that made her laugh unexpectedly, that he was more educated than his rough exterior suggested, having attended a year of college before his father died, and he had to return home to help run the ranch. Harrison learned that Olivia had grown up in Richmond, the daughter of a doctor, that she had been educated at a women's seminary, learning literature and music along with the healing arts her mother taught her, that she missed the green hills of Virginia but loved the stark beauty of the desert, that she played piano when she could find one, and that she had a weakness for chocolate when she could get it. As the days passed, the tension between them grew. Olivia would catch Harrison watching her with an intensity that made her pulse race. She found herself inventing reasons to stand close to him, to brush against him accidentally. The air felt thick with unspoken words, with desires neither of them dared voice. It was nearly a week after Harrison's arrival when everything changed. Olivia was out in her small garden behind the cabin, tending to the medicinal herbs she grew there. The afternoon sun was hot on her back, and she had removed her bonnet to feel the breeze on her face. She did not hear Harrison approach until he was standing right behind her. "You have aloe growing here," he observed, crouching down beside her. "That is good for burns." "And cuts and rashes and a dozen other things," Olivia agreed. She was acutely aware of how close he was, close enough that she could smell the clean scent of soap on his skin. He had washed at the well earlier, and his hair was still damp. "My mother used to grow herbs," Harrison said. "She had a whole garden of them, used to make teas and poultices for anyone in the area who needed them." "She sounds like a wise woman," Olivia said. "She was. I wish you could have met her." Harrison plucked a leaf from the aloe plant, running his thumb over its smooth surface. "She would have liked you." "What makes you say that?" Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Harrison turned to look at her, and the expression in his eyes made her breath catch. "Because you are like her, strong, compassionate, brave. The kind of woman who does what is right even when it is hard, even when it is dangerous." "I do not feel brave," Olivia admitted. "Most of the time, I feel terrified." "That is what bravery is," Harrison said. "Being scared and doing the right thing anyway." He reached out and tucked a loose strand of her hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. Olivia's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. The moment stretched between them, taut as a drawn bow. "Olivia," Harrison said, his voice low and rough, "I need to tell you something. I need you to know that I did not just come here to repay a debt. I mean, I did at first, but now I cannot imagine leaving. The thought of riding away from you makes me feel like I am suffocating." Joy and fear warred in Olivia's chest. "Harrison, I barely know you. I know, and I barely know you, but I have never felt like this before, like I was lost and suddenly found, like everything that came before was just leading me to this moment." He cupped her face in both hands, his touch infinitely gentle. "Tell me you do not feel it too. Tell me I am imagining this connection between us, and I will leave you alone." But Olivia could not tell him that, because it would be a lie. She did feel it, this impossible magnetic pull toward him. She felt it in every glance they shared, every accidental touch, every conversation that went on longer than necessary, because neither of them wanted it to end. "I feel it," she whispered. "God help me, I feel it too." The relief that flooded Harrison's face was almost painful to witness. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, the question so earnest and respectful that it made her want to cry. Instead of answering, Olivia rose up on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them learning the shape and taste of each other. But then Harrison's arms came around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened into something hungry and desperate. It was like a dam breaking, all the tension and longing of the past week pouring out in this single point of connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Olivia felt dizzy with sensation. Harrison rested his forehead against hers, his hands still tangled in her hair. "I am not good with words," he said. "I do not know how to tell you what you mean to me, but I want to try. I want to wake up every morning and figure out new ways to make you smile. I want to protect you and support you and be worthy of you." "You already are worthy," Olivia said, her voice thick with emotion. "You are the best man I have ever known." "Give me time to prove it," Harrison said. "Give me a chance to show you that this is real, that what I feel for you is not just gratitude or obligation. Let me court you properly." Olivia laughed through the tears that were streaming down her face. "We are in the middle of nowhere, Harrison. How exactly do you plan to court me properly?" "I will figure it out," he promised, and kissed her again. Over the following weeks, Harrison made good on his promise. He courted Olivia with a sweetness and creativity that constantly surprised her. He brought her wildflowers from the hills, great bunches of them that filled her cabin with color and fragrance. He carved her a new pestle when he noticed her old one was cracked. He rode into town and came back with books from the small lending library, knowing she loved to read. He took her on rides through the countryside, showing her hidden valleys and secret springs. They would pack a lunch and spend the afternoon exploring, talking about everything and nothing. Harrison told her about his dreams of starting a ranch someday, not the massive cattle operation his father had run, but something smaller and more manageable, a place where he could breed horses, which had always been his true passion. Olivia told him about her dream of opening a real medical practice someday, maybe even teaching other women the healing arts. She wanted to write down everything her mother had taught her, preserve that knowledge so it would not be lost. Harrison listened to her dreams with the same intensity he brought to everything, and he never once suggested they were foolish or impossible. Word spread through Silver City that Harrison Ellis was courting Olivia Bennett, and opinions were mixed. Some of the townsfolk, particularly those who had been quickest to judge her, still looked at them with suspicion. But others, like the general store owner and the Reverend's wife, seemed genuinely happy for them. A few of the older women even stopped by the cabin to bring Olivia baked goods and offer advice on catching a husband. "As if I am trying to trap a wild animal," Olivia said to Harrison one evening, making him laugh. "Well, you did catch me," he teased, "though I think I am the one who set the trap." They were sitting on her porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Harrison had his arm around her shoulders, and Olivia was leaning into his warmth. These evening moments had become her favorite part of the day, when the work was done and they could simply be together. "What do you think happens now?" Olivia asked. "With us, I mean. We cannot court forever." "No, we cannot," Harrison agreed, "which is why I have been thinking. I have enough money saved from selling the ranch to buy some land. There is a property about 5 miles from here, good water and grass. I was thinking I could start building a house there, a real house big enough for a family." Olivia's heart skipped. "A family?" Harrison turned to look at her, his expression serious. "I know we have not known each other long, just a few weeks, but I am 30 years old, Olivia. I know my own mind. I know what I want, and what I want is you. I want to marry you, build a life with you, grow old with you." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "But I will not rush you. If you need more time, I will wait. I will wait as long as you need." Olivia felt tears sting her eyes again. She seemed to cry all the time now, but they were happy tears, joyful tears. "I am 24, she said, "and I also know my own mind. I lost everyone I loved once. I thought I would never risk that kind of loss again. But you make me want to be brave. You make me believe in second chances." "Is that a yes?" Harrison asked, hope blazing in his eyes. "That is a yes," Olivia confirmed. "Yes, I will marry you. Yes, I want to build a life with you. Yes to all of it." Harrison let out a whoop of joy and swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she was breathless with laughter. When he set her down, he kissed her with a passion that made her knees weak. She clung to him, marveling at how her life had changed in such a short time, from facing death to finding love, all in a matter of weeks. They were married a month later, in a simple ceremony at the small church in Silver City. The Reverend performed the service, and Marshal Crawford gave Olivia away, his way of atoning for his role in nearly getting her killed. Not everyone in town attended, but enough people came that the church felt comfortably full. The general store owner and his wife stood as witnesses, and the ceremony was short but heartfelt. Olivia wore a simple dress of pale blue cotton, the nicest thing she owned. Harrison wore a new suit he had bought specially for the occasion, looking uncomfortable but handsome in the formal clothes. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Harrison kissed her with such tenderness that several of the older women dabbed at their eyes. The celebration afterward was modest but joyful. People brought food to share, and someone produced a fiddle. There was music and dancing in the churchyard, and for a few hours, the divisions and suspicions that had plagued the town seemed to fade away. Olivia danced with her new husband under the stars, feeling happier than she had thought possible. "I love you," Harrison murmured in her ear as they swayed together. "I do not think I have said that yet, not properly. But I do. I love you, Olivia Ellis." The sound of her new name on his lips sent a thrill through her. "I love you too," she whispered back, "more than I have words for." They spent their wedding night in Olivia's cabin, which felt different now that it belonged to both of them. Harrison was gentle with her, patient and caring, as they learned each other's bodies. It was Olivia's first time, and she was nervous, but Harrison made her feel safe and cherished. Afterward, they lay tangled together in her narrow bed, talking quietly in the darkness. "We are going to need a bigger bed," Harrison said, making her laugh. "We are going to need a bigger everything," Olivia agreed. "This cabin was built for one person." "Then it is a good thing I already bought that land," Harrison said. "We can start building our house next week." True to his word, Harrison began construction on their new home. He hired a few men from town to help, and the house began to take shape on the property he had purchased. It was a beautiful spot, with a view of the mountains and a creek running through the eastern edge of the land. Harrison had grand plans for the house, with separate rooms for sleeping and living, a large kitchen, and even a dedicated space where Olivia could work with her medicines. While Harrison worked on the house, Olivia continued her healing practice. Word had spread that she was not the Confederate sympathizer people had believed her to be, and patients started coming to her again. Some came shamefaced, apologizing for doubting her. Others simply needed help and were willing to look past their prejudices to get it. Olivia treated them all with the same care and compassion she always had. A young mother with a sick baby, an older man with arthritis that made it hard to work, a cowboy who had been kicked by a horse and needed stitches. She did not turn anyone away, and slowly, grudgingly, the town began to accept that she was not their enemy. Harrison was there through all of it, a steady, supportive presence. He drove her into town when she needed to see a patient who could not travel. He helped her gather herbs and prepare medicines. He listened when she talked about her cases, offering thoughtful insights or simply being a sounding board when she needed to think through a difficult diagnosis. In return, Olivia supported Harrison's work on their new home. She brought him lunch in the middle of the day, taking breaks from her own work to sit with him and watch the house take shape. She helped him decide on the placement of windows and doors, the color they would paint the shutters, the design of the porch. "I want it to feel like home," Harrison said one day, wiping sweat from his brow as he surveyed their progress. "Not just a house, but a place where we build memories, where we raise our children if we are blessed with them." The thought of children with Harrison filled Olivia with a warmth that was almost painful. She had given up on the idea of family years ago, but now it felt not only possible, but inevitable. She imagined little boys with Harrison's gray eyes and her dark hair, little girls with his smile and her stubbornness, a home filled with laughter and love. Construction took most of the summer, but by late September, the house was finished. It was not a grand mansion, but it was solid and beautiful, built to withstand the harsh New Mexico weather. The walls were thick adobe, keeping the interior cool in summer and warm in winter. The windows were positioned to catch the breeze and the light. The porch wrapped around two sides of the house, offering shade and a place to sit and watch the sunset. Harrison carried Olivia over the threshold on the day they moved in, both of them laughing like children. They spent that first night in their new home, making love in their new bed, christening each room with their passion and joy. It felt like a new beginning, a fresh start after years of loss and loneliness. Fall turned to winter, and their first season in the new house was everything Olivia had hoped for. Harrison began building his horse breeding operation, starting with 2 mares he purchased from a rancher in Las Cruces. He spent hours working with them, training them with a patience and gentleness that made Olivia fall even more deeply in love with him. Olivia continued her healing work, and Harrison built her a separate small building near the house to serve as her clinic. It was a luxury she had never imagined, having a dedicated space for her work. She could keep patients overnight if needed, without worrying about disturbing their home. She could maintain supplies and medicines without cluttering the living space. It was perfect. Christmas came, and they celebrated quietly together. Harrison carved Olivia a beautiful jewelry box from mesquite wood, the surface smooth and gleaming. Olivia knitted him a warm scarf and gloves for when he had to work outside in the cold. They cooked a special meal together and sat by the fire, talking about their dreams for the coming year. "I want to expand the herd," Harrison said. "Maybe get a good stallion to breed with the mares, start building a reputation for quality horses." "I want to take on an apprentice," Olivia said. "Teach someone else what I know, maybe one of the young women in town who shows an interest in healing." "We could have both," Harrison said, pulling her close. "We could have everything we dream of, together." In early spring, Olivia began to suspect she was pregnant. She kept the suspicion to herself at first, not wanting to get Harrison's hopes up if she was wrong. But as the weeks passed and her symptoms became unmistakable, she knew it was time to tell him. She waited until after dinner one evening, when they were sitting on the porch watching the stars come out. Harrison had his arm around her, and she was leaning against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Harrison," she said quietly, "I have something to tell you." He looked down at her, his expression concerned. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine," she assured him, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "Better than fine. We are going to have a baby." The look of wonder that spread across Harrison's face was something Olivia knew she would remember for the rest of her life. "Truly?" he whispered. "We are going to be parents?" "Truly," she confirmed, tears of happiness streaming down her face. In the fall, probably October, Harrison let out a shout of pure joy and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "This is the best news," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "The very best news. I am going to be a father. You are going to be a mother. We are going to have a family." They clung to each other on the porch as the stars wheeled overhead, talking excitedly about the future. Names they liked, how they would need to prepare a nursery, what kind of parents they wanted to be. It was the happiest Olivia had been in her entire life, and the happiness was made sweeter by the memory of how close she had come to losing everything. The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia suffered from terrible morning sickness in the early months, and Harrison fretted over her constantly. He insisted she cut back on her work, taking on more of her cases himself when she was too ill to see patients. He brought her tea and dry bread, held her hair when she was sick, and reassured her that everything would be all right. As her belly grew, Harrison became even more protective. He would not let her lift anything heavy or work too long in the garden. He made her rest in the afternoons and insisted she eat enough for the baby. It would have been suffocating if it had not come from such obvious love and concern. Summer was hot and uncomfortable with the extra weight she was carrying, but Olivia tried not to complain. She spent her time preparing for the baby's arrival, sewing tiny clothes and blankets, organizing the nursery that Harrison had built off their bedroom. She read every book she could find on childbirth and infant care, determined to be as prepared as possible. Harrison, for his part, threw himself into finishing projects around the property. He wanted everything to be perfect for when the baby arrived. He built a cradle from smooth pine, rocking it gently to test the motion. He reinforced the fences around the property, making sure everything was secure. He even built a chicken coop, reasoning that fresh eggs would be good for Olivia and the baby. In late October, just as the leaves on the cottonwoods along the creek were turning gold, Olivia went into labor. It was late afternoon when the first pains hit, and she knew immediately what was happening. She had helped deliver enough babies to recognize the signs. "Harrison!" she called, trying to keep her voice calm. "It is time." Harrison, who had been in the barn tending to the horses, came running. His face went white when he saw her doubled over with a contraction. "What do I do?" he asked, panic clear in his voice. "Should I get the doctor from town? Ride for help?" "No time," Olivia managed through gritted teeth. "The baby is coming fast. You are going to have to help me." "I do not know how," Harrison said, looking terrified. "I will tell you what to do," Olivia promised. "Just stay calm and listen to me." The next hours were a blur of pain and effort. Harrison followed Olivia's instructions exactly, boiling water, preparing clean linens, supporting her as she labored. He was terrified. She could see it in his eyes, but he did not let that fear stop him from being exactly what she needed. When the baby finally came, sliding into Harrison's waiting hands, Olivia felt a rush of relief and joy so intense it made her dizzy. The baby let out a lusty cry, and Harrison laughed through his tears. "It is a boy," he said, his voice full of wonder. "We have a son, Olivia." Olivia reached for the baby, and Harrison carefully placed him in her arms. He was perfect, small and red-faced and screaming with healthy lungs. Olivia counted his fingers and toes, checked him over with practiced hands, and found him whole and well. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Welcome to the world." Harrison sat beside them on the bed, his arm around Olivia and his finger clutched in the baby's tiny fist. "What should we name him?" he asked. Olivia had been thinking about this for months. "Henry," she said, "after your brother. He brought us together in a way. It seems right." Harrison's eyes filled with fresh tears. "Henry Ellis," he said, testing the name. "It is perfect. He would have been honored." They spent the rest of the night marveling over their son, taking turns holding him and trying to figure out how to care for this tiny, precious life they had created. It was exhausting and overwhelming, and the most beautiful thing Olivia had ever experienced. Over the following weeks, they settled into the rhythms of new parenthood. Olivia was grateful for her medical training, which gave her confidence in caring for Henry. Harrison was a natural father, patient and gentle with the baby. He would walk the floor with Henry for hours when the baby was fussy, singing old cowboy songs in a low, soothing voice. The townspeople of Silver City came to visit, bringing gifts and congratulations. Even some of the people who had been quickest to judge Olivia seemed genuinely happy for them. Marshall Crawford brought a hand-carved rattle. The Reverend's wife brought a beautiful quilt she had made. The general store owner set up a line of credit for them, refusing to take payment for the first round of baby supplies. "You have become part of this community," he told Olivia. "Folks respect what you do, how you help people, and they see how happy you and Harrison are together. It reminds people that good things can still happen, even after hard times." As winter settled in, Olivia found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed in just over a year. She had gone from facing death to finding love, from loneliness to family, from an outcast to a respected member of the community. It felt like a miracle, the kind of second chance she had never dared hope for. Harrison seemed to be thinking along the same lines. One evening, as they sat by the fire with Henry sleeping in his cradle nearby, he pulled Olivia close and kissed the top of her head. "Do you remember the day we met?" he asked. "When I rode into town and you were standing on that platform?" "I am not likely to forget it," Olivia said with a slight shiver. "I looked at you and I felt something shift inside me," Harrison continued. "Like I was seeing my future and my past all at once. My brother kept his promise and saved your life through me, and you gave me a reason to stop drifting, to put down roots again." "You saved me in more ways than one," Olivia said softly. "You gave me back my hope, my belief that life could be good again." "We saved each other," Harrison said. "That is how the best partnerships work." Spring came again, bringing new life to the land. The mares had foals, and Harrison's breeding program was officially underway. Olivia took on an apprentice, a bright young woman named Sarah, who showed real aptitude for healing. Henry was growing like a weed, starting to smile and coo and show his own personality. Life settled into a comfortable pattern. The seasons turned, each bringing its own challenges and joys. They added 2 more children to their family over the next years, a daughter they named Ruth and another son they called James. The house rang with laughter and occasional chaos, and Olivia could not have been happier. Harrison's horse ranch prospered, gaining a reputation throughout the territory for producing quality animals. Olivia's medical practice grew as well, with patients coming from as far as 50 miles away to seek her help. They taught their children the values they held dear: compassion and hard work, mercy and strength. As their 10th wedding anniversary approached, Olivia found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them to this point. All the loss and pain that had preceded their meeting, the near tragedy that had brought Harrison into her life, the courage it had taken for both of them to trust in love again after so much grief. They celebrated their anniversary with a trip back to the church in Silver City, where they had been married. The Reverend was still there, older and grayer, but still kind. He smiled when he saw them come in with their 3 children. "I remember your wedding," he said. "Some folks thought it was too soon, that you barely knew each other. But I could see the love between you. It was real and true, the kind that lasts." "It has lasted," Harrison agreed, his arm around Olivia's waist. "And it has only grown stronger." That evening, after the children were asleep, Harrison and Olivia sat on their porch watching the sunset just as they had done countless times before. The view never got old, the way the light painted the mountains in shades of purple and gold, the peace of their land, the home they had built together. Do you ever think about that day? Olivia asked. The day you rode into town? All the time, Harrison admitted. I think about how close I came to being too late. If I had been delayed even a few hours, if my horse had gone lame, or I had taken a wrong turn, you would have died. And I never would have known what I was missing. Fate, Olivia said softly. Or Providence. Something brought you to me at exactly the right moment. Henry brought me to you, Harrison said. He kept his promise, even from beyond the grave. He made sure I found the woman who saved his life. And in doing so, he saved mine too. Olivia leaned her head on Harrison's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. We have a good life, she said. A life worth fighting for, worth being brave for. The best life, Harrison agreed, and it is only going to get better. He was right. The years that followed brought their own challenges, of course. There were droughts and difficult winters, illnesses and injuries, the normal trials of life on the frontier. But there were also triumphs and joys. More children came, filling the house with noise and love. The ranch expanded, becoming one of the most successful in the territory. Olivia's apprentice Sarah became a skilled healer in her own right, eventually opening her own practice in a neighboring town. Harrison and Olivia grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They were partners in every sense, supporting each other through good times and bad. They taught their children about compassion and mercy, about standing up for what was right even when it was difficult. They told them the story of how they met, of the near tragedy that had brought them together, of the importance of second chances and forgiveness. On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a party. The whole community came out to celebrate, people from Silver City and the surrounding ranches. There was music and dancing, food and laughter. Marshall Crawford, now retired and quite elderly, gave a toast. 25 years ago, I nearly made the worst mistake of my life, he said, his voice wavering but clear. I almost let fear and prejudice convince me to hang an innocent woman. But Harrison Ellis rode into town and reminded us all what justice really means, what mercy looks like. Olivia and Harrison have built a life together based on those principles. They have made this community better, stronger, more compassionate. We are blessed to have them among us. Olivia felt tears on her cheeks as Harrison squeezed her hand. She looked around at the faces gathered to celebrate with them. People who had once been ready to see her hang. People who had learned to see past their prejudices and recognize the good in others. It was not perfect, and there were still those who harbored resentments and old hatreds, but it was better. The world was slowly, incrementally becoming a more merciful place. As the party wound down and their guests departed, Olivia and Harrison stood together under the stars. They were in their 50s now, their hair graying and their faces lined with the marks of a life well lived. But when Harrison looked at her, Olivia saw the same love in his eyes that had been there from the beginning. 25 years, Harrison mused. It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all. I know what you mean, Olivia said. Some days I can still feel like that terrified woman on the platform, certain she was about to die. And then I look at our life, our children, everything we have built, and it seems impossible that this all came from that terrible moment. The best things often do, Harrison said. Come from the worst moments, I mean. When we are stripped down to our essence, forced to confront what really matters. That is when we find out who we really are, and what we are capable of. You were capable of such courage, Olivia said, turning to face him. Riding into a hostile town to defend a stranger. That took remarkable bravery. You were not a stranger, Harrison corrected gently. You were the woman my brother loved like a saint. The woman whose mercy gave him years he would not have had otherwise. And the moment I saw you, I knew you were going to change my life. I just did not know how much. They kissed under the stars, a gentle, familiar kiss that held 25 years of love and partnership. Olivia thought about all the moments that had led to this one. All the choices, good and bad. All the losses that had shaped them into the people they had become. All the courage it had taken to trust in love after being so deeply wounded by loss. The years continued to pass, bringing grandchildren and then great-grandchildren. Harrison and Olivia became the patriarch and matriarch of a large, loving family. They were pillars of the Silver City community, respected and loved by nearly everyone. Their story became something of a legend, told and retold until it took on the quality of a fairy tale. But to Harrison and Olivia, it was simply their life, the life they had fought for and built together, the life that had started with a near tragedy and blossomed into something beautiful and enduring. When they were in their 70s, they took to sitting on the porch every evening, watching the sunset just as they had done for decades. Their children were grown with families of their own. The ranch was being run by their eldest son, Henry, who had inherited his father's way with horses. Olivia had retired from active practice, though people still came to her for advice and wisdom. "We have had a good run," Harrison said one evening, his hand clasped in hers. "The best," Olivia agreed. "No regrets?" "Not a single one," Harrison said, "except maybe that I did not meet you sooner." "We met exactly when we were supposed to," Olivia said with certainty. "Not a moment too soon or too late. Everything happened just as it was meant to." Harrison squeezed her hand. "Promise me something." "Anything," Olivia said. "Promise that when one of us goes, the other will not give up. We'll keep living, keep finding joy. We have had too good a life to end it in grief and mourning." "I promise," Olivia said, though the thought of losing him made her chest ache. "If you promise the same." "I promise," Harrison agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in brilliant colors. The same view they had enjoyed for over 50 years, and it never got old. The beauty of the land, the peace of their home, the love that had sustained them through everything. In the end, they died within days of each other, both succumbing to pneumonia during a harsh winter when they were in their late 70s. It was as if neither could bear to be without the other, even in death. Their children gathered to mourn them, but there was celebration too. Celebration of a life well lived, of a love that had endured every test, of the legacy they had left behind. At their funeral, held in the same church where they had been married so many years before, their eldest son Henry stood to speak. He told the story of how his parents had met, of the courage his father had shown, and the mercy his mother had embodied. He talked about the lessons they had taught, the example they had set, the way they had made the world better simply by living in it with grace and compassion. "My parents showed us that love is a choice," Henry said, his voice strong despite his grief. "A choice to be brave, to be vulnerable, to trust even after being hurt. They chose each other every single day, through good times and bad. And in doing so, they built something that will outlast them. A family, a legacy, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope survives, that mercy matters, that love, real love, can transform everything." The church was packed with people whose lives had been touched by Harrison and Olivia, former patients who still remembered how Olivia had healed them with gentle hands and kind words, ranchers who had bought horses from Harrison and learned from his integrity and expertise, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their blood and their values forward into the future. They were buried side by side on their ranch, under a pair of cottonwood trees that Harrison had planted the year they were married. The headstones were simple, bearing just their names and the dates of their births and deaths. But the inscription below read, "Together they found hope after loss, love after pain, and built a life of mercy and courage, forever united, forever remembered." The ranch continued to operate, passed down through the family. The medical practice Olivia had founded evolved into a small clinic that served the community for generations. The house they had built together remained standing, solid and beautiful, a testament to the strength of the foundation they had laid. And their story lived on, told by parents to children, by teachers to students. The story of a woman accused of treason who was saved by a cowboy who saw the truth. The story of two wounded souls who found healing in each other. The story of love that began in the worst of circumstances and grew into something transcendent and eternal. It became a reminder that mercy is not weakness, that standing up for what is right, even in the face of a mob, is the truest form of courage. That love, when it is real and true, can overcome any obstacle. That second chances are always possible, no matter how dark the moment may seem. In Silver City, New Mexico, there is a small plaque on the site where the old church once stood. It tells a brief version of the story, of how Olivia Bennett was nearly hanged for showing mercy to wounded soldiers, and how Harrison Ellis proved her innocence and won her heart. Tourists sometimes stop to read it, drawn by the romance of the tale. But for the descendants of Harrison and Olivia, it is more than just a romantic story. It is a reminder of where they came from, of the values that define their family. It is a call to live with the same courage and compassion their ancestors showed, to choose mercy over vengeance, understanding over judgment, love over fear. And on warm summer evenings, when the sun sets over the New Mexico desert in shades of gold and crimson, it is said you can sometimes see two figures sitting on the porch of the old ranch house, an old cowboy with storm-gray eyes and a woman with healing hands watching the sunset together just as they did for over 50 years. Forever united, forever at peace, forever proof that love can triumph over even the darkest circumstances. Their story, which began with such violence and fear, ended in the most beautiful way possible, not with drama or tragedy, but with quiet contentment, with a lifetime of love shared and memories made, with children and grandchildren who carried their legacy forward, with a community transformed by their example. Harrison Ellis had ridden 300 miles to honor his brother's dying wish. He had found Olivia Bennett on the brink of death and saved her, but in saving her, he had saved himself too. He had found purpose after years of drifting. He had found love after loss. He had found home after being lost. And Olivia, who had believed she was destined for loneliness, who had convinced herself that love was too dangerous to risk, had found the courage to open her heart again. She had taken a chance on a stranger who defended her with nothing but words and truth. She had built a life more beautiful than any she had imagined. Together, they had proven that the human capacity for compassion is stronger than the human capacity for hatred. That mercy is not a political act, but a moral imperative. That love, when it is brave enough and strong enough, can heal even the deepest wounds. Their children grew old passing this story down, and their grandchildren did the same. It became part of the family mythology, the founding story of a legacy built on courage and compassion. Each generation added their own chapters, their own examples of choosing mercy over judgment, love over fear. The ranch eventually grew into one of the largest horse breeding operations in the Southwest, known throughout the country for quality and integrity. The medical clinic Olivia founded evolved into a teaching hospital that trained dozens of healers in her methods. Her journals, carefully preserved, became required reading for medical students interested in frontier medicine and the history of women healers. But more than any of these concrete legacies, what Harrison and Olivia left behind was a reminder of what is possible when people choose love over hate, understanding over judgment, mercy over vengeance. They showed that even in the worst moments, redemption is possible, that second chances exist, that love can bloom in the most unlikely circumstances and grow into something that transforms not just two lives, but entire communities. Their story proved that heroes do not always arrive in shining armor. Sometimes they come on dusty horses, trail-worn and tired, carrying nothing but truth and courage. Sometimes they stand before hostile mobs with nothing but words, risking everything to do what is right. Sometimes they save lives not with violence, but with mercy, not with weapons, but with healing hands. And sometimes, just sometimes, two broken souls find each other at exactly the right moment and build something so beautiful it echoes through generations. A love story for the ages, set against the harsh beauty of the American frontier. A reminder that even in the wildest places, in the hardest times, love and mercy can flourish and change the world. That is the legacy of Harrison Ellis and Olivia Bennett. Not just a romance, but a revolution of the heart. Not just a love story, but a call to be better, braver, more compassionate. Their life together was a testament to the power of choosing hope over despair, forgiveness over vengeance, love over everything else. And in the end, that is all that matters. Not the accolades or the prosperity or the legacy in concrete terms. What matters is that two people found each other across impossible odds and chose to build something beautiful together. What matters is that they lived with integrity and died with no regrets. What matters is that their love was real and true and strong enough to withstand anything the world threw at them. From a moment of near tragedy on a dusty platform in Silver City, New Mexico, grew a love story that would be remembered for generations. A cowboy and a healer brought together by fate and bound together by choice. A partnership built on respect and deepened by shared values. A love that started with a promise to a dying brother and became something far greater than either of them could have imagined. That is how the best love stories work. They start in unexpected places, in moments of crisis or chance. They grow through choice and commitment, through the daily decision to show up and care and try. And they endure not because they are perfect, but because they are real, because the people in them choose each other again and again through everything life brings. Harrison and Olivia chose each other on that first day, when he defended her before a mob and she trusted him despite being a stranger. They chose each other on their wedding day, promising to build a life together. They chose each other through the challenges of frontier life, through the joys and sorrows of raising a family, through every sunset they watched together from that porch. And in the end, when their story reached its natural conclusion, they were still choosing each other, still holding hands, still grateful for every moment they had been given, still proof that love, when it is brave and true, can overcome anything. Their descendants still tell the story, still gather on that ranch to celebrate the anniversary of the day Harrison Ellis rode into town and changed everything, still hold up their love as an example of what is possible when people lead with courage and compassion instead of fear and judgment. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, two souls rest together, a cowboy and a healer, forever united by a love that began in crisis and grew into something eternal, proof that even in the darkest moments, hope survives, that mercy matters, that love, real love, can transform everything, that second chances are always possible, and that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with a simple act of courage and a willingness to see the truth when everyone else is blind.